sake of it, has the stream started?
No, it's not live.
Okay. Test.
Hello and welcome to our TEDx event. My name is Dylan and I'll be your host today. We are a group of young people
Everyone enjoys the event today as much as we did organising it. Now I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker, Emily, with her talk called How to Be Happy. Fearless Against Crime.
Hey. Brilliant. Well, welcome everybody. Happy to be kicking this off for you guys as the first speaker. My name is Emily and I'm from fearless.org. Don't know how many of you have heard of Fearless before, but Fearless is the youth service of the charity Crime Stoppers. And what we offer is a place to report crime 100% anonymously. So before we talk about what that is and how it works, I've got a question for you guys. Would you report a crime? What do you think? Those of you watching this, those of you sitting there in front of me, would you report a crime? What do you think? Okay, let's ask you a few more questions. I want you to think carefully about them. If you're walking down the street and you saw a stranger committing a crime, someone you didn't know, would you report that? hope so. Brilliant. If it was let's say you're a young person and it was someone at your school, or maybe someone that you work with. You don't know them very well, you just know they're in the same school, same company, you know they'd committed a crime. Would you report that? What do you think? What about if it was a friend? Or someone close to you, a friend, and they'd committed a crime? Would you report that? It's a more difficult question, isn't it? What if it was a family member and they'd committed a crime? Would you report them? It's very difficult, and you can see as it gets closer to you, there are a lot more reasons why you may be hesitant to report crime. And there are a lot of other reasons why you might not want to pass on information. But did you know that young people specifically experience and witness the most amounts of crime? And statistically, they are the least likely to actually pass that information on. So young people are more aware of what's going on, they know what's happening in their area, but no one can help fix it, help improve their communities, because they're unlikely to pass it on. And this is for a variety of reasons. Young people being the least likely to report it, do that for a variety of reasons. One of them is education. Maybe they're not exactly sure what the crime is that they've witnessed. Maybe they think, well, if it's not actually a crime and I report it, am I going to get in trouble for that? It could almost blame themselves for being in that situation. Maybe they think, well, I shouldn't actually have been at the park when that happened. So if I tell, someone might be angry at me. Or it could be to do with some of these words. I'm sure most of you that may have worked with kids and young people yourselves, you are very familiar with those words being bounced around the playground. I'm not a snake, I'm not a snitch. And this is becoming increasingly popular, that people are saying, well, you know, I'm not going to report even who stole the teacher's rubber because I don't want people to see me as a snake. Because for a lot of young people, what that means is that they're not going to be trusted by their friends. They're going to be ostracized within their peer groups, and they're not going to be able to become popular amongst their school friends. And so it puts a lot of young people off from being seen, at least, to be that person. Another thing that may discourage young people from reporting crime is to do with the relationship young people have with the police. I speak to a lot of young people and they say, well, I don't really think the police are going to fix it. I don't want to speak to them myself. I don't want my name to be associated with any of it, so I'm just not going to say anything. But the question that I pose to young people and I pose to you, what could happen if you don't report it? So some people say, well, you know, if I go down the street and I see someone being mugged, there's, you know, if I ring the police, they're probably not going to get there on time. It's none of my business anyway. I'm just going to walk on. Like, there's someone else older and wiser than me who's going to report it. I'm just not going to do that. Well, what are the consequences of leaving that unchallenged and leaving that unreported? The perpetrator, the attacker, the criminal is still out there. And the people who need to catch him do not have the intelligence and the tools they need to catch that person and stop him from hurting more people. There are a variety of different things that can happen if you don't report a crime. Crime continues. You are aware that crime is happening in your area. You're walking down the street and you're looking over your shoulder because you're thinking, I know this is now a dangerous place, but you've not spoke up, you've not done something to stop it. I've got a short video for you now. Hopefully the sound will work on this system, which is going to show you the other consequences of not reporting.
The world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing.
Now, I think that's quite a powerful video, and that covering of the mouth is supposed to signify all of those reasons that you thought of when you thought, oh, I probably might not report that. All of those reasons that hold people back from passing that information on. And silence is contagious. The more people that don't speak up, the less likely it is that someone else is going to speak up for that. And what you saw in the video, that young person saw the attackers in the first instance, and they chose not to say anything. Those same attackers were the same people that were assaulting that lady in the street. If they'd have spoke up the first time, could they have stopped that? Could they have stopped those individuals then attacking what we assume to be their mother? Is there some sort of personal responsibility we could place? Well, that's a moral question, but we all have the power to make the communities that we want. Do we want a community where we walk down the street looking over our shoulder? Or do we want one where we feel safe and secure? And we all have the power to create that by passing on information about those that make areas unsafe. Put yourself in the shoes of the victim or the victim's family. You know that there were witnesses to that attack, and you know that they've chosen not to say anything. How would you feel? You would want them to come forward. You would want justice to be done. And by saying nothing, we don't help create a better place. So would you be more likely to pass on information, to report crime, if you knew you would remain anonymous, so no one would know who you are? What do you think? Have a think about that. Well, I'm here today to tell you about somewhere that you can actually do that. Crime Stoppers has been going for 30 years as an independent charity, and Fearless.org is its youth service. And what we provide is that 100% anonymous place to report crime for young people aged 11 to 18. And this service arises just out of those issues, those reasons why you may cover your mouth, those reasons why you may not say anything. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's a neighbour you don't want them to know, maybe you feel threatened. Someone said, if I find out you've said anything, I'm coming back to you. Maybe you just don't want to get involved. Well, then you can help create that safer space by passing on information anonymously. We've also just had a fantastic upgrade to our anonymous reporting form on the website, so I'm going to give you guys one of the first previews to it now. So on the website, you go to fearless.org and you will find our anonymous reporting form. There you'll be asked to put all the details that you can think of into this form. So I need you to put your detective caps on, think you're on CSI, and put all of the information in that you think is necessary. And so the first thing you'll be asked is the crime or the incident, and where did it take place? Very key thing, because sometimes we get reports that just say, Jack has a knife at school. But because it's anonymous, we can't go back and say, oh, who's Jack? What school does he go to? Please be as specific as possible, especially when it comes to locations. How many St. John's schools are there across Britain, or how many high streets? If you're not sure, give it a Google, find a postcode, and pop it in to make it as useful as possible. Then as much detail about the crime that you witnessed or you know about, the people that are responsible for the crime. So do you know what they look like? Do you have any features that stand out? Do you know their name? Do you know what their social media is? Do you know where they live? Just anything you think could be at all useful, pop it in. And then it concludes by asking a little bit of extra information, such as whether the people that you're reporting about have access to weapons, because that's really important information to pass on. And then it asks you to submit anonymously. So it's actually a really simple and easy form to fill in, and it only takes a matter of minutes for you to make that positive change in your community. We start protecting your identity, however, from the minute you get on our website, because you might not want people to know that you're using our site to report crime. So I don't know if you can see in the bottom corner there's a little thing that looks like a button with an eye on it, and it says hide your visit on it. And every time you're on any web page on fearless.org, you might be on your phone, you might be in a public space on a computer, and maybe someone looks over your shoulder or comes into the room. You press that button, hide your visit, takes the screen all the way back to Google, and you can just pretend you were Googling like cute dogs or something until they're gone. Then press back, and it takes you back to the form that you were filling in. A couple of caveats with our system. The first one, we can't take information from victims of crime. And that's because we are anonymous. So if you said, or if I said, my name's Emily and this happened to me at this place, and I passed it on to us, we couldn't pass that on because we'd have to tell them who Emily is. So if you are a victim of crime, we encourage you to look at the signposting links on our website and find loads of other agencies that can support you with what you're going through. Our service is primarily for those who have witnessed crime, they've seen it, or people that know information about crime. Secondly, we're not an emergency service either. Although all of these forms are picked up 24/7, we can't guarantee that we can ring the police as quickly as you guys can with as much information as necessary. So please don't use it in an emergency. And for those of you out there thinking, oh, hang on a minute then, how is this actually anonymous and, why do we need this? If you were to go to the police, for example, ring up the police and say, hi, I have some information, but I don't want you to know who I am, the police only have to guarantee confidentiality. And what that means is that they can keep you secret as long as they need to, because if they need to find out who you are, they can. Whereas there is no way we can find out your identity. And we do that, first of all, by not asking for any personal details. You saw the form, nowhere there for you to put them in. We don't record any personal details either, and your IP address is scrambled too. So our super high cyber security ensures that no one is able to trace or track your movements on our website or prove what information you gave or who gave it. In the 30 years that Crime Stoppers have been going, we have never revealed the identity of someone that's given us information. And as an independent charity, it means we are not linked to the government or the police, and so they can't get that information either. Purely, one, because we don't keep that information, we don't store it, we don't have it, all the security stuff happens before it even gets to our desk. And secondly, we wouldn't give it to them anyway. So you are completely safe with us. How does this work? So say you witnessed something and you wanted to report it. Maybe you say, my neighbour at number 3 is dealing drugs. You write the form with all the details in, you submit it. Your IP address is scrambled and it lands on the desk at our contact centre. They will then sanitize the report. So they'll take out all of the information that's relevant and they'll remove anything that links it to you. So even if you accidentally give information about yourself, such as my neighbour at number 3, you live next door, we remove that. So the edited, sanitized report would say, suspected drug dealer at number 3. And that would be sent off to the police as a piece of intelligence for them to use in their investigations, to launch new investigations off of, and help keep your community safe. But there is no way that us, the police, or the people you're reporting about will know that it was you that gave that piece of information. And we like to describe this information as like little jigsaw pieces that help fill the bigger picture of what's going on in your community. You might have seen something you thought was slightly suspicious and passed on the details of a registration number. And maybe that fits into the bigger picture by proving that someone said they were supposed to be there, but they weren't, they were over there. And you're helping create that safe space. Just to show you a little snapshot regionally in Surrey, these are the reports coming from young people directly through fearless.org in Surrey, and it shows that nearly half of the reports we receive from young people are about drugs, and that's drug dealing, drug manufacture. We've also had a couple of reports explicitly mentioning county lines, which is, if you don't know what it is, I'd suggest you Google it. Followed up swiftly by weapons and then exploitation and abuse. So we can tell quite a lot from these statistics that young people's awareness of these types of crimes is increasing, but also that these are the things that they are seeing the most of and that they are most concerned about as well. So we can do a lot to help young people. There's a couple of bits of information we can't take in our form, because we can take information on nearly any type of crime apart from those listed here, especially the things to do with the council, driving offences and things like that. But there are links on our website if you want to report information like that. So just to recap, fearless.org is an anonymous crime reporting charity. We're not an emergency service or a victim service. We do also offer a translation service, so if you want to fill the form in a different language, you can go ahead. But the key thing to remember is to put as much information in there as possible. We also provide a lot of education and outreach to young people, and some of you might have seen me visiting your schools and doing talks about different crime topics. And we're really lucky to be funded by the Police and Crime Commissioner for Surrey to enable us to provide these workshops to young people, training for professionals to help raise awareness of both fearless and crime in our community and help individuals spot the signs and prevent it. So since October 2018, we have delivered an input to over nearly 16,000 young people and trained 1,544 professionals, which I think is absolutely amazing. And we're going to continue doing that throughout as long as we've got funding for, which I think is a good couple of years now, which is brilliant. And if any of you are interested in the work that we do in Crime Stoppers or Fearless, we also have an ambassadors program and a volunteering program too, so I recommend you check that out. But just to demonstrate how important our service is, both Crime Stoppers and Fearless. Last year, 520,000 people contacted Crime Stoppers and Fearless, and that's enough to fit in Wembley Stadium there over 5 times. Out of those 520,000 people, we helped solve and prevent 27,000 crimes. Now, I can't tell you about all of the crimes that we've helped solve because of the anonymity, but there are a few examples on the screen there for you, including, I will highlight the fact that nationally, over 50% of all of the reports we receive from the public are to do with drugs, and swiftly followed by drink driving and driving offences, actually. But we help take thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds worth of drugs off of the streets every single year. But by far the most impressive statistic I've come across is that 10 people are arrested every day because of information passed on through our anonymous service. So thank you very much. I'll just leave you with this. If you ever witness crime, you see crime, please speak up, pass it on and do something about it so people can do something about it. And by all means, go to the police because that's what they're there for. But if you ever find yourself in the position where you don't want to go to the police for whatever reason, or you don't want anyone to know that that information came from you, please be fearless. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily, for a brilliant start to our event today. I'm just about to sanitize the microphone, so can we quickly mute the stream? With her talk called Why?
First, I want to say thank you so much to Emily. I thought that was an incredible, really informative talk. I learned myself stuff, so hopefully everyone else learned as well. I just wanted to start today. I'm Rebecca, Becky. I'm going to talk about why, a question that we ask ourselves and hear a lot throughout the day, I'm sure. I wanted to start with a picture of my family. Me and my husband, Gethin, we've got twins who are almost 6, and Avan is our youngest, and he's 3. As you can see, they're about as cheeky as they look in the picture. And this question, why, is a very well-used one in our house. Can you get dressed? Why? Can you brush your teeth? Why? We need to put sun cream on. Why? Even coming here today, why do you need to go to this event? You get the point. But it's not just young children that continue to explore this word why. What we don't realize is this craving for meaning, knowledge, and certainty is what we all keep and have for our whole life. When I was first asked to speak today, I thought I'd stand up here and talk about what I do. But then I realized, actually, what I think is more important than what I actually do is why I do what I do. For me, the importance of us all finding a personal why is what can help us to set us up to lead a life with a greater purpose. When I was 12, I watched a movie called The Sixth Sense. The moment it finished, I thought to myself, I want to be a child psychologist. I didn't think about why at the time. I just set my goals, got myself into studying, got into a university to study psychology, and thought that was it. It wasn't until I was at university, struggling through my course, that I realized, why am I here? Why did I want to do this? Unfortunately, the answer didn't magically appear. Turns out, watching The Sixth Sense isn't a good enough reason to want to become a psychologist. Through that time, I decided to take some time away from university in the summer, and I signed up to a summer exchange program. When I was 20, in 2006, I did my first year at a summer special needs camp in America. Some of you may be thinking, what is a special needs camp? The special needs camp I went to ran 5 sessions throughout the summer, and you worked one-on-one with an adult, or later in the summer with a child who had a developmental disability or a learning disability. You would spend 2 weeks with that one person, and you're going to see in a minute somebody who I worked very closely with in my first session called John Cavalieri, who I think actually may have changed my life, and we have a picture of him in our house now. When I thought about camp and working with the guests, summer after summer, that question why became a very easy one for me to answer. I love the connection with people. I love helping others have a voice. I love advocating for people with disabilities and their families. I love seeing people achieving their best. I love being a part of what people can do and not necessarily what they can't do. This is my passion. This is what drives me into finding out, and this is what made a huge difference in my life and helped me shape the decisions and directions that life will continue to throw at me. Just to clarify, I'm by no means an expert on this, and there is a lot of ancient wisdom out there, but not necessarily common wisdom that we hear on a daily basis. I'm just here to share how I found my personal why and how it's helped me in every aspect of my life, to offer you some tools and how you can begin to discover your why. If you Google finding your personal why, you'll find a lot of resources and points that can come up and help you. Today, I'm just going to go through 3 questions that helped me on this journey. Question 1, what do others see in me? My whole life, I'd been told that I was a natural at caring. I never was quite sure what that meant or how I was supposed to use that. But my first year at camp, when I started to trust people and I started to get to know people, the constant continuation of people saying to me, you were made for this. You are natural at this. You're in your lane. This is what you're going to be doing, came up more and more. And listening to others and seeking advice from people who are in the positions and roles that you're passionate to move into is a great way to start pointing in discovering your why. Question 2, what makes me righteously angry? It's an interesting question. What makes you righteously angry? Working at camp made me realize the level of social exclusion that was present in the world around me. It made me realize the difference I wanted to make in being an advocate for my friend John Cavalieri here, who I met in the first summer at camp. This righteous anger gave me the energy to get my degree and get a job with the organization in New York City that I believed in. In what part of your world do you feel a righteous urge to make a difference? Question 3. What makes me lose track of time? I'm not talking about Netflix binging, video games, Minecraft, Fortnite, whatever those things you do that are so fun and you can just play for hours. That's not what I'm talking about. For me, organizing and planning can steal my time in the best way. When I sit down to plan activities for people coming to camp, the hours turned into minutes, and I walked away feeling refreshed, not drained from working. I got excited to plan each session that they came. I was excited to make activities together, to put activities together which included everybody. And it was in those moments, feeling lost in time, that I started to realize what my why was. These are 3 simple questions. What do other people see in me? What makes you righteously angry? And what is it that you do that makes you lose track of time? By focusing on these questions in my own life, I've come up with my personal why. The statement is, for me, to care, connect, and to advocate for others around me. It comes down to such a simple, short sentence. It makes a huge impact, but it makes a huge impact on every decision that I make for myself and for my family. It was knowing my why that moved me from New York to Eswatini in Africa. There we worked for another organization. My husband and I moved there to help set up for programs for families with children with disabilities. We wanted to equip and train others to help bring these families together, to thrive in their communities, to have connection with each other and the people around them. We're back in the UK now due to COVID, but my why continues to keep me focused on the direction I feel I should be moving in. When we live and speak from our why, we're really living and speaking from our heart and our authentic self, and it resonates with others' hearts. I believe that if we live from our own authentic why, we'll be successful and satisfied throughout the process and journey of life, and not just by reaching that goal, getting that car, or even getting that job. It might not be the connection to people that gets you as excited as me, but I'm sure there's something out there that pulls you forward and gets you energized to the point that you could be up here on this stage talking about what it is. What is it? Why does it excite you? When you find your why, you can lead, love, and live from it, and enjoy the wonderful side effects of meaning, purpose, and happiness in every stage of your life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for a great talk. We're now going to have a short break for all of you guys to get up and stretch your legs. The bar outside is going to open for refreshments, and just ask one of us if you need any help. Welcome back, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the break. I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Stephen, with his talk, Unconscious Bias.
Hi everybody, I'm Stephen Ireland, he, him, from Pride in Surrey. Pride in Surrey is a non-profit organisation that looks after the LGBTQ+ community, celebrating, educating and connecting. Who of you here and at home has been to a Pride event before? Only a couple of you? Well, I'm sure plenty more of you will be able to come along to a Pride event very soon. We're proud to announce that we do have a number of Pride events this year from Pride in Surrey, starting with our Pride on the Road event, which will be stopping here in Camberley on the 17th of this month, so next Saturday, 7 p.m, come and see us in Camberley town. So unconscious bias, I'm going to talk to you about unconscious bias today. I'm gay, but my boyfriend might not be, he might be bisexual, but the assumption is that we're both gay. And of course, there's lots of assumptions that people make day in, day out. There's an instinct that everybody has. So, for instance, you'll be out and about and you'll make a judgment call. Do I pick up the Anadin or do I pick up the cheap paracetamol or something like that? And of course, people tend to pick up the branded one because they presume or they assume that that one may work better. And there are a number of times in life that you might decide that actually you're not going to go to a specific area or event or something like that because you think it might be unsafe or something like that. So what we're asking as a community of LGBTQ+ individuals, don't make assumptions, just ask those questions and think about subconsciously what your views are, but why you've got those views, and obviously make the decision as to whether or not they're the right views, because sometimes views can change depending on your experience and things like that. And obviously unconscious bias decisions can most definitely impact the interactions with people in the community. Their friends, families, may well be allies of the community, but of course people just don't necessarily understand the community and therefore it makes it very difficult. What are unconscious biases? Well, unconscious biases are thoughts and feelings that each of us have that influence our decision and judgments. They're rooted in the preferences typically from the everyday society, how we've been brought up, etc. Can you think of things that you might be thinking right now? So I've got a couple of examples there. People that assume, people from London assume that people from Surrey are much more wealthier, for instance. And that students may be lazy, so I don't want to employ a student because maybe they don't have any get up and go. And it could be anything. You interview two people, one person's slim, petite, very active, the other person might be a little bit larger. So you're going to assume that that larger person's not going to be able to do something because of their size. And there's all those assumptions that happen just in your head at that minute, at that point of day. So I've got you thinking now, what are your decisions? What decisions have you had to make today? When you got up, what did you have for breakfast? What time did you set off? Did you set off early? Did you set off late? Did you turn up late because you made that wrong decision? There's all those decisions that you have to make day in, day out. This character here with his football, people think that because he's gay, he doesn't like football. And for instance, this person down here, she wants to go on holiday. She loves the look of Thailand, but she doesn't want to go because she doesn't like the food. Again, people assume. But actually, a gay person can love football. And somebody that loves Thailand can still go to Thailand and still pick up a fish and chips. Your brain automatically organises things, categorising them. Just think about how many things you know. Who knows their mobile phone number off by heart? Pretty much all of us. All of you at home probably do too. That's in your brain. That's such a clever and powerful thing. And I can still remember my grandmother's telephone number, my first ever house phone number, the doctor's phone numbers. They're all up here, but they've got to be categorised. Do you know your doctor's names? Probably a few people, yeah, here and there, and obviously at home as well. Again, you've got that here in your brain. You know what pills you have to take in the morning or in the evening, and things that you do on a daily basis. They're ingrained in here, but you still have to make those decisions. Your brain is bombarded with 1 million pieces of information at a time, but you can only consciously process about 40 things at any one time. Think about that, because at a very quick moment You'll make the decision on whether or not you go left, whether you go right, whether you jump on a bus, whether you get a train. A lot of the time, it's what's in here. A lot of us will just set off on our journeys without even thinking about going onto maps and seeing if there's any traffic in the way or how long it's going to take today. And that's a fact. But there are tools out there that make sure that you can actually check it to see if your train's cancelled ahead of time. Because I know full well that I've attended literally rocked up to the train station, train's cancelled, and I think, oh, it's pouring down the rain. Why didn't I check before I left? We all do it. Why do they occur? Well, they could occur for a number of reasons. It could be somebody's faith. It could be the society they live amongst. Their personal experiences, i.e. what's happened to them previously. Maybe their culture. Maybe they're part of the LGBTQ+ community. They don't necessarily understand or want to go out or do anything outside of the confines of a gay or lesbian bar or club because they're scared. But actually, the society will accept it. But it's in here. So I'm going to talk to you about one example of how you can potentially challenge a personal circumstance. So for this example, I've got a trans woman here. Now, this trans woman is in a medical setting. She's just gone into the doctors to get some support, and she says, look, I don't know what's happening, I'm not feeling too good, and has a conversation. She says, in that conversation, she says, I've just moved into the area, I'm currently going through my transition, suffered a bit of family rejection. The assumption in that medical setting, mental health, that person's trans, they're going through a difficult time, but they've actually forgot that one piece of vital information. Their assumption in that medical setting is actually it's because that person's transitioning, it must be because of that, let's just deal with that. But actually that person just feels isolated. They need somebody to talk to. So without taking that step and actually listening to what's happened, then you don't know. So we're asking people, don't ask, don't assume. Ask, don't assume. Obviously, any number of settings can be provided, and obviously examples can be provided to you. But what I'm saying here is you might know somebody in your friends group, your family, that might be going through a difficult time. Don't assume it's because their sexuality or gender. Don't assume it's because they're somebody of faith or whatever. Have those conversations. But most of all, just think about the decisions that you make, because the decisions that you make will definitely impact others. So my name's Stephen Island. Thanks so much for this. Of course, thank you. And of course, if you've got any questions with regards to Pride in Surrey, do feel free to come and see me or see prideinsurrey.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for that great talk. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Elena, with her talk called Living Independently in Mental Health, How to Be the Best You.
Hello everyone, my name is Elena and I'm a tourist management student at the University of Surrey. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity provided to me and allowing me to be here today. It is great to finally be able to say welcome to my TED Talk to an actual public and not to my stuffed animals at home, which, by the way, I still have stuffed animals because they remind me of my hometown. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. Living independently, away from home, mental health, and how to be your best you. So let me start off by asking you a question. How many of you actually enjoy going to school? Raise of hands. Okay, so not a lot, good. I actually enjoy going to school now, to university, but when I was in high school, I absolutely hated it. I felt very unhappy. My mental health was pretty low. I didn't like going to school, to meet the teachers. When a teacher would ask a question in class, even though I would know the answer, I would just sit in silence and wait for somebody else to say it, just because I didn't really feel comfortable in that environment. And that changed when I moved away to go to university. And when I was in high school, I always knew that I wanted to leave my hometown and to study in a different country. And that is because I didn't feel at home in that country, in that town. But when I got to university, I actually felt more at home here than I did there. Of course, I still miss my friends, my family, but I feel much more myself here. And this reminds me of a quote that I saw on social media. It says something like, when a flower doesn't bloom, you don't change the flower, but you change the environment in which it grows. So I didn't change myself, I just changed the environment, and then I bloomed. So let's discuss about how to be your best you when you are away. Well, first of all, my advice would be to put yourself out there and to get out of your comfort zone, because the comfort zone is what is keeping you in a place where you can really expand, where you can't really grow. And in the moment you step out of that comfort zone, you start to discover yourself in ways that you didn't know you are before. And when you go to university, my advice would be to go out there and to get involved in every single thing that you find available. Go to societies, go to parties, meet new people. When the Students' Union is having elections, actually run for a position in the Students' Union and campaign, because all these things that you do will give you such a valuable set of skills and will really, really help you further along the way when you want to apply for jobs, for graduate roles, or for placements. And another important thing, in my opinion, is volunteering. How many of you volunteer? Oh, quite a lot. That's good. And do you like it? Do you enjoy it? Yeah? Good. That's good. Volunteering for me was something that really boosted my self-esteem, my confidence, my public speaking skills, my adaptability, and it's something that I really cannot recommend enough. And when you go to a different place, to university, for example, this is such a great way of getting involved, of meeting new people, and of changing yourself in ways that you didn't know you can be changed. So, yeah, these are some of my advices on how to be your best you. And in terms of keeping your mental health on track, I would suggest to speak to people and to be aware of all the support that is available to you, because there are plenty of resources, both online, at universities, at institutions, that can help you overcome certain situations that might feel difficult for you. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Elena, for that brilliant talk. Now we've got another 30-minute long break before our final talk. The bar will be open once again for refreshments, and remember to ask one of the team if you need any help.
Wait there. Welcome back, everyone. We would now like to introduce Benjamin with his talk, How to Be Happy and Not Work Hard.
Thank you very much. Well, great to be here. This is literally my life's work, sort of avoiding work. Well, not really avoiding work. I should probably explain a little bit. Like many people, I have to work. We all have to work. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've learned from the world of work, because that's really been my work, is actually studying work, which gets very confusing sometimes. Like most people, growing up, everyone asked me what I wanted to be when I grow up, which is one of those irritating questions that we get asked. And usually by that, they usually mean, what do you want to do? What are you going to do for a job? What are you going to work at? Now, clearly, like most people, or some people my age, I wanted to be a racing driver when I was small. Clearly not necessarily that practical. I also wanted to eat chocolate, a bit more of an achievable goal, managing that one quite well, even during lockdown. But the thing is, I didn't actually know what I wanted to do at all in terms of work. And so it was, after all sorts of interesting school reports, I remember one particular year, my head teacher wrote my report and said, Benjamin's a bit lazy. And to be fair, I kind of like to feel I'm efficient about doing things rather than lazy. And as it turned out, there's a technical term for what he called lazy, which was, I was actually dyslexic, so I couldn't read and write, really struggled with that. So that kind of limited my career choices. And so it was, at 16 years old, I found myself in a very small, very dark cupboard, not as some form of punishment. This was the careers cupboard at school. And I was there with a careers advisor standing over my shoulder, typing answers into a computer. And after many, many questions from the computer, it kind of printed out a sheet of paper, which I've still got today. It's very yellow and slightly faded, but I've kept hold of it. And it had 3 suggestions for me as to what I should do for work. The first suggestion was that I should be a photographer. And I'd been to a few weddings, and quite frankly, between you and me, that looked very stressful and a lot like hard work. So I crossed that one out. The second one was to be an architect. And that involved drawing and writing, and it sounded like a lot of reading as well. So that one was pretty much off the list. The third choice was to be a copywriter. Now, I had no idea what that was, so I asked somebody, and they explained it was somebody who wrote for a living, which by then I knew I was dyslexic and realized that probably wasn't going to be the best life choice for me. We'll come back to that, though, as it happens. And so that was the world of work for me. As it turned out, what I actually wanted to do was I wanted to be a sound engineer and work for the BBC. And for those who are a little bit older or into retro things, I wanted to work on Top of the Pops as a sound engineer. And one of my teachers took kind of pity on me and arranged for me to do work experience in a big, flashy recording studio in London, which I did. And my observation was that looked like a lot of hard work. So that one was off the list as well. It turns out you have 160 hours. Now, 160 hours is? It's a working week. That's a whole week. Now, fortunately, we don't have to work the whole 160 hours. We tend to squander away something like 40 hours doing things like sleeping, which actually is really important. Good to do that. We don't sleep enough in the UK. So that's kind of 40 hours or so gone. Of the rest, we spend about 40 hours in work in the UK. And it varies depending on what profession you do, but that's kind of the average. It's dropped off a little bit. We now have 38 hours. I don't know what we're doing with the extra 2 hours we get now. But that's a good chunk of your week. So I figured that working efficiently and being happy in work is probably an important part of the puzzle of what happens with 168 hours. Now, I was somewhat fortunate in that I got to do what I loved. What I loved doing was playing with computers. And actually my first job was actually as a computing lecturer, which was a bit of hard work, but quite good fun. And then from there, I became an IT support person, literally like the IT crowd, if you've ever seen that. I was in the basement, answering the phone going, have you tried switching it off and turning it back on again? That was loads of fun. And then one day, a friend phoned me up and said, I've got some friends and they've got this company, you should come and work with them. I think you'd like that. And so I joined a Silicon Valley company in America as one of their early employees. Fast forward about half a decade or so, and it was the most valuable company on the planet. Not the most valuable tech company, but the most valuable company, full stop. And I had a lot of fun, and it really wasn't hard work at all. I flew around over 40 different countries. I got to build the first online banks, all sorts of adventures. It definitely wasn't hard work, but it was very long hours. And actually, I was very happy doing it. But it got me to thinking, once I'd done that for a long while, how do we get to do things that we love? Because a lot of the careers advice that I heard given to people was do what you love. And I remembered from being in the recording studio that whilst that might work for some people, you might be able to get paid enough to live doing what you love. And if you can do that, that is awesome. Go for it. But oftentimes, the things that we love don't necessarily pay enough to pay the bills. My observation in that recording studio, working with some very, very famous jazz musicians, was that whilst they were celebrities and you would class them as professional musicians, they all had to do other jobs, other work, to pay the rents and their food. And so they didn't get to do that. The other thing that I observed during my time in the recording studio was that something strange sometimes happens if we do the things we love for money. But of course, then we become dependent on them. And it moves from something that we love to something that we have to do. And you know how things that you have to do feel. And that's hard work. So it was interesting that I thought, well, if we don't do it that way round, if we can't all do what we love, how do we love what we do? And that's really been my last 10 years' work, is looking at how people can love their jobs and how we can build companies where people really enjoy working there and the company makes a big difference. And so that's what I do every day, which is great fun. It's long hours sometimes, but it's definitely not hard work. And I'm still learning, still figuring things out. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I think I've figured out so far, and you can try them and see if they work for you. So the first thing is, and this is not obvious, loving what you do isn't actually an emotional thing. Love is a choice and an action. And what I've observed over the last 10 years is people who really love their jobs, it actually isn't always just an emotional thing. It's actually a choice. They've decided that they're going to love what they do and put their heart and soul into it. And sometimes that job might not be something you go, okay, so you make like this little bit of a car? That's not something I'd imagine somebody being passionate about, and yet I've met people who are really passionate about that, and they love that thing. They make one component in the car. That's their whole job. The whole factory they work for makes that one tiny component. But they love it, and they love being there. And they would probably turn up for work even if you didn't pay them, although they make sure their boss doesn't find that out. See, quite often we focus in work on what we're going to do, and that was my careers advice that I got. It was focus on what kind of job I was going to do. But actually, it turns out the thing that's more important for being happy in work and for work being easy is actually working out who you work with. Now, when you go and do a job interview, obviously you're trying to convince the people to hire you, and that's a very important part of the job interview. That's a top tip for me. If you blow that part, the game's pretty much over. But there's another half to every job interview, which is understanding the person on the other side of the desk, or the Teams call, or Zoom. What do they like to work with? Because you're interviewing them as well. Because most people end up copying the behaviors of their boss, of their manager. So actually who you work with determines who you become. So more important than what you're going to do for work is who you're going to work for, because that will determine who you become. It will change your personality, your habits, and they'll determine what skills you learn as well. So interview them a little bit, in a very gentle way, but understand. The other thing is, and this is something people that always cotton on to, if you find a good boss, they'll leave. Most managers will leave their job, on average about 20% per year. So if you work somewhere for a couple of years, your boss will leave. So the other thing to check is, even if they're a good person to work for, is that company or organization good at hiring good managers? Because your boss will probably get replaced. They might get replaced by you, in which case, cool, if that's what you want to do, but they get replaced by somebody else. So understand as well, what kind of company is it? Who are you going to join? Because where you work will determine where your career goes. If you're working for a company that's growing and expanding, there'll be all sorts of opportunities. So it's an interesting and different set of questions to go in and ask if you want to find somewhere that's not going to be hard work. Because again, that relationship with your manager, what we find is people who really like working with their manager, strangely enough, they enjoy their job regardless of what it is. Whatever it is, they love their job. And they're happy in the work as well. See, work gets hard when it gets boring. And you heard a little bit about that in an earlier talk, that actually, if something is boring, that last 15 minutes before 5 o'clock when you leave can seem like 7 hours. I remember when my first job working in a supermarket, it was like forever. What I learned later on is if I'd spent those 15 minutes like talking to a customer or learning something about where things were kept in the store or how the manager did their job, those 15 minutes would have probably gone really, really quickly. because we control how quickly time goes. Because those 40 hours of work can seem like 5 minutes if you find the right thing and work at it the right way. Done wrong, it can feel like the full 168 hours. There are really 3 ways that I've found to make work happier that seem to work for people, and people tell us work for them. And they come from some basic psychology, from a guy called Daniel Pink, who looks at mastery, autonomy, and purpose, which are not immediately obvious words or how those apply to the world of work. So I'll explain that in just a couple of minutes, and you can see how that might work for you. The first and most important thing is be great at what you do. Interestingly, people who are great at what they do say that they love what they do, and it's kind of this circle, right? If you love what you're doing, you invest in being good at it. But even if you don't like what you do, actually, if you invest time in getting good at it, what we've seen is that people like it more. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's bottle washing, fixing a car, flying a plane, being a CEO. If you spend time outside of work getting good at it, it's kind of like weightlifting. The work becomes easier. And interestingly, the attitude to the people around you changes. And people who report being very competent at their job report really good relationships with the people they work and much higher scores in terms of being happy. So get good at what you do, whatever it is. And it doesn't matter what it is. You can get good at anything. That means dedicated practice. It means research. That's the one thing it's definitely worth working hard on because it makes the rest of the work easy. The second thing is a little bit more complicated. And this has taken me a few more years to figure out, and we're still figuring this one out. There's something called autonomy. And oftentimes, you'll know the situation in work where maybe you have a manager who decides what every single little thing you do is, or maybe you have somebody else in your life who's kind of a little bit like that. And that can be quite frustrating. So what people tend to think is, well, if I'm independent, then that'll be easier. If I can just kind of get on with my work and everybody leaves me alone, that'll be fine. And that's actually not what autonomy means. And actually, people who report that they are very independent in their work actually usually less happy and usually leave their job because they feel quite isolated. So if you look at the tree here, the little known secret is you can only see half the tree, right? Do you know that from your biology? Because the important half of the tree is underneath the ground. It's the root system. And that whilst this tree is relatively autonomous, it gets on and does its own thing, it grows its own leaves, actually, it depends on the ecosystem around it. It contributes. So it's drawing down things from the atmosphere, putting them out through its root system, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going off behind the scenes where it's really tied in. And actually, people who are happy in their work, they have that balance. They can make the decisions they need to make to get the job done, but also they work cooperatively with the people around them. And again, cooperation is a really important thing. So it's that balance. You want to find somewhere not where you're completely left to your own devices, but actually somewhere where you can work with people who support and help you, but you can do the stuff that you need to do. And again, a lot of that is about the culture of the company, and that's a really important thing. It's kind of an overused term, but how do they let people work? Because that will determine how it feels, whether it's hard work or easy work. And the last thing, and this comes up a lot, is the why. And this is a really complicated thing, because there's your individual why. There's some great things about that today. But there's also the why you're doing that job. Now, for some people, that may mean that you want to go and work for a charity. And I should just kind of put a little heads up there. People who work for charities oftentimes are actually not as happy as people working for other businesses because you have very high expectations of achieving great things. And actually, those high expectations can make it quite hard. Oftentimes, the people that we find that report the highest level of happiness, it's about a shared purpose in the business. And it doesn't really matter what that is. Because you've probably had that experience in your life as well. If you work with a team, doing one thing and working together, right? That's a great experience. Time goes quickly and you really enjoy it. And it's actually the same in a business. So if you look at the companies that I worked for in my early career, and companies like Google, they tend to have these big missions like connect the world's computers, or a computer on every desktop, or index all the world's information. It's a bit vague, but everyone knows that they're working towards the same goal. It might be for you that actually the purpose of the job is it lets you do the other thing that you love. It may be that you want to be a musician and you work in a job where your manager lets you take time off to do your recording, go and do your shows, do your promotion, and maybe that's why the job serves its purpose for you. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's having a purpose, having a why in that job makes the time go super quickly and makes you able to enjoy the work. See, We all have to work. We can't escape that one, except for a very few folks. But we can definitely choose work that actually doesn't feel like hard work. We might be working hard, but it feeling like hard work is to do with our attitude towards it. So get good at what you do, whatever it is. Invest the time in learning from the people who are best at the job, and that will reap rewards. Interesting, those people who invest in that are usually more highly paid, if that happens to be a motivator for you. Find somewhere where you can work with people who trust you to get on and do what you do best. And that can be hard, and that can take a bit of experimentation. You might not find that job first off. Interestingly, people in those roles usually got the job, like I did, because a friend recommended them. And actually having friends at work is another indicator for people being really happy at work. So do make friends with the people you work with. I know some people don't always want to go down that avenue, but the general average seems to be people who say they have friends at work stay longer, enjoy it more, and they sleep better as well, which is kind of interesting. And then last, think about your why, and talk about that at the interview as well, so that they know why you've taken that role. Maybe it's because you want to do a certain thing. If you've got a shared why with the business and your manager understands that, then work will be not always easy, but definitely not hard, and it will definitely bring you a good deal of happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benjamin, for a great final talk. I'd like to thank all of our speakers today for presenting their amazing talks and sharing their stories. I would also like to thank the team for their amazing work in making this event happen. Finally, I'd like to thank everyone in the audience and on the live stream for being here and supporting our speakers. The team today are Reese, Jacob, Georgie, Lily, Joel, Charlie, Isaac, and our youth workers, Claire, Samina, Helena, and Shakira. Not Shakira, sorry, I can't read. Shakara. I'd also like to thank those of us who are self-isolating at the moment, which is Omkar and Maz. It's a shame they can't be with us. And also Chrissy for all of her tech help. That concludes our TEDx event, and you're welcome to start leaving now.